in full color while we live life in high definition. Jennifer Moss today and Dave Hawley. And we're talking all about basil. And I am actually I'm smelling it over here. This was not one grown by us.
No, it was not.
I can tell because of the pot, but that's okay. It's too cool in our greenhouses to be able to pull this off.
Yes.
This looks like it's multi-seeded too.
It is multi-seeded, and was also done hydroponic.
Nice.
Unfortunately, when we say hydroponic, we really want on a hydroponic to be a local footprint.
Yeah, this is definitely not local.
This is thermal California.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's sad because we do have a hydroponic growing facility in
Buell, right?
Well, there is one. Is there one in Buell? There's one in Glens Ferry, and then there's another one on the border there of Oregon and Idaho in Fruitland.
Okay. You know, I think she has a system for tomatoes that I'm thinking of that's down in Buell, but I couldn't tell you if it's technically hydroponic. I don't think it is. I think it's just one of those European tomato systems.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I'm thinking of. Okay. Trend at Blue Rock has got one of those European tomato systems that's pretty incredible.
When you walk into a greenhouse full of basil, you know that you've arrived.
Oh, no kidding. It smells, and it smells wonderful. I mean, like there are things that are stinky.
Yeah.
Like I think of lavender stinky, rosemary stinky. Mm-hmm. Both smells they like.
Mm-hmm.
Thyme.
Well, you can even tell on the production line.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are doing rosemary today. Yeah.
I can tell, so I actually love it when our basil gets overgrown in the greenhouse and I actually get scissors and big, huge garbage bags and I go out there and cut the daylights out of it. And I take it home and make pesto, but I make pesto differently. I don't use cheese and I don't use pine nuts. I tend to do pistachios. And then for cheese, I think you should add that fresh. It's my personal opinion. Also, I'm allergic to cheese, so I don't put cheese in it. But I do salt and pepper and lemon and pistachios and olive oil.
Sounds good just listening to it. So
I know.
And the smell that we've got now with the basil, it's like, it's
super quality. So when you talked about doing a basil podcast, I'm all ears because food is my love language and I have complicated eating stuff. So herbs, which basil is defined as, herb
is in its part of the mint family.
I did not know that. The leafing and branching actually would make sense for that. Huh. Yeah. You're going to teach me stuff today, aren't you? Yeah. That's a good thing. I'm a lifelong learner.
So the opportunity to talk about basil today is not basil the plant. There are so many things that we can do with basil the plant. I've always been interested in the backstories, if you will.
Okay.
The mythology of why a plant was determined to be such a way. So you can talk about that in basil or sage or rosemary and go back to Greek mythology, right? Back to the Roman time and say, okay, this is how they thought of the plant. I think that is so cool to be able to look at it and go, well, this is a plant that we come to enjoy to eat.
Right.
But all the other things that they did with them way back in the day.
Well, scent too is attributed usually to memory.
Absolutely.
And it's one of those stronger senses, especially to long-term memory. So if your grandmother always made a certain recipe with basil, anytime you smell that, you're going to have a memory. Yep. And so it's a really powerful trigger. And the fact that it's got history attributed to it, I mean, that's easy.
Yeah. So you can go back to the Greek mythology.
Okay, let's hear the story.
Okay, so
I have not educated myself on this, so I'm letting this be the Dave show. I'm just along for the ride. I'm a passenger.
Way back in the day, there, back in Greek mythology, Roman mythology, there was this reptile, if you will, part dragon, part lizard. Okay.
I'm looking this up.
And it was called the basilisk.
Basilisk.
Basilisk. Okay. So half dragon.
That's in Harry Potter too.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've never seen a Harry Potter.
The basilisk is the large snake that speaks parcel tongue in the first book, maybe the second book. It's the second book because it's not the Chamber of Secrets. It's the second book. Okay. Zach's a Harry Potter.
Never knew that this would turn into Harry Potter.
Basilisk.
Wow.
No, so the basilisk is where Tom Riddle's spirit, his spirit is hiding in a diary, and the basilisk is in a chamber, and the basilisk can speak parcel tongue, which is snake language, and Harry Potter can speak parcel tongue, which is something that only certain wizards have. And Tom Riddle, who ends up being Voldemort, I'm screwing this up, can also speak parcel tongue. And so the basilisk is, so Basil just became part of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Winning today, my contribution. I get a $10 word for that, right?
Does the Greek version have any kind of paralysis
yes
thing associated with it?
Let's hear
it.
Yeah,
basically what would happen is, the basilisk had this all power. If it looked at you, if it breathed on you, okay. If it had spit the fire, this could kill you. Yes. All right. So these Romans or Greeks carried basil plants just for that case. Okay. So if they got breathed on or whatever, they would rub it on their face or their arms, and it was said to give healing powers.
Yeah, antidote for snake bites.
Which is false.
Yeah, it is totally a lie.
Yeah.
That is not fact.
Yeah.
That is written on the internet.
But it's right. But this was part of the folklore, so you had the basil. So this was a healing plant.
I'm educating myself as Dave talks.
And I always thought, okay, that's pretty cool, right? So you've got this monster that you've probably never seen, and I could just see the conversation. We've got to go past, Netherlands,
the basilisk.
The Netherlands, and the basilisk is going to be there.
Better pack basil.
Ooh, we better. Ooh, I don't know if I want to go, but I've got basil, so I'm going to be okay. And I'm just going to walk with my basil, and I'm going to make sure that I've got it, Now, they probably weren't carrying plants. They were probably carrying sprigs.
Yeah, leaves.
But
and anyone knows if you trim basil, it does not hold very long. It wilts quickly.
So that's with a an animal, if that nobody's ever seen. So it's kind of cool. But if you look at what the Greeks used to do with basil, it was said that basil was a bad omen. Okay. And
ooh, really?
The reason being is that they would cut the basil with metal knives or any type of metal. Okay. And what would happen is the leaves would turn black, and they're going, ooh, we better not touch this because it's dying. So we're going to die if we eat these black leaves because they cut them with a knife.
I wonder if
with a metal. But it was just the difference between metal and the leaves interacting with
the metal.
But they didn't know that at the time.
No, they didn't. They didn't realize it was chemistry reaction.
Right. So this is why you never cut basil with a knife today. You always want to pinch it, and then you want to smash it, and tear it. You don't want to use knives on basil. That's what I've always been told.
Scissors work okay.
Scissors probably would.
Scissors are okay.
Cutting the stems.
Just because I do that all the time, and it seems
cutting
to
the
work.
stems.
On here, it says that the Greek viewed it as a symbol of mourning, which would be an attribution to the dying.
It was considered, if you had basil embalmed in you.
They talk about that with the Egyptians.
Yes.
I'm educating myself from the sidebar here.
It would be the gateway to the next life.
Okay, so they needed it to go to the next level.
Right. So they would embalm the body with basil.
Okay.
So now you look at it realistically. How long did they keep the bodies? Was it to keep the smell down? All this kind of good stuff. But what was so the mythology? Well, yeah, if I'm embalmed in basil, if our king or queen or nobleman, they're definitely going to make it to the next life.
Oh yeah. They
So-
call it the kingly herb too.
Yes, it is. It's the king of herbs.
Yeah.
And that was after
Saint
Saint Basil something, King Basilus,
I don't know.
Bacillus maybe.
In Portugal, it's considered a symbol of love given to loved ones in a small decorative pot on St. Anthony's Day.
It is the love herb, So, you put some Barry
Which
White,
is
and he's
funny,
singing his deep down
because it's
voice.
also regarded as the symbol of chastity.
Yes.
That's in direct contradiction with each other.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah, that's
that's
kind of a
what
catch-all.
it's come into, right?
A safeguard in the passage of life, a declaration of love, protection from evil, and a token to ward off the devil.
Correct.
Why the devil?
Well, this goes back to the basilisk.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's legit.
So-
that they're designated
Yeah,
the basilisk
yeah.
as evil because it brings harm or
Right.
death, and so this is a protection. Okay, I can correlate to that.
Okay.
I
So
can
there
connect
were
that.
so many things.
What
And
else here?
as the Greeks got more and more entwined with the basil plant, and as we know, there's hundreds of different varieties, right? They came to see basil as a form of purity.
Interesting.
Okay. So the tale goes that if you were one to touch basil, to take the cuts, right, to take the leaves and things like that, you had to wash your hands in 3 different streams.
Super pure to touch
Yep,
the pure
yep.
herb. Okay.
And then you had to be cleaned. Okay. So this is like
I would like my
you-
basil sponge bath, please.
So this was like you presenting yourself to somebody who was really high up there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you're trying
Maybe
to
a king, maybe
purify in some way, shape,
so
or form.
you are purified, you are cleaned, and then you are wearing pure white. Okay, because white was a symbol of purity. Okay,
You know that basil is like a grass stain on the playground. That's all I'm saying.
and then only then could you then touch the basil to harvest it. Okay, so it was held in high
High
revere,
regard.
and it still is today. I mean, there's a lot of people that will not go without basil in their yards.
That's
or in their
actually
gardens.
true.
You know, that's why
It's
it's
always
such,
in mine.
that's why it's such a staple.
February. You found this at a grocery store.
I did.
Because that's where you're going to find it right now. And in a garden center, you can find it in the spring. But after that,
Right.
it's a pain in the butt.
Absolutely.
And fresh basil in a dish is an impossible flavor to recreate without the actual herb. And if you have your own
That's
dried
not-
basil from the store,
it's-
it is just not
It's
the
not
same
the same
thing.
thing. It's not the same thing.
It's not.
It's so inexpensive.
And buying basil in a jar at the store, I'm sorry, no disrespect for anyone who does that on a regular, but honest to God, it is stupid easy to make.
Yeah.
You need a fruit processor or a blender. You could have a smoothie sized blender. It doesn't matter. You're taking a handful of basil leaves, the olive oil, the salt, and whatever you're binding. Like if you're doing a nut with it, if you're just doing, you can literally do it with salt, lemon juice, and olive oil, and that's it, and the basil leaves. If you want to be that simplistic about it, you can. And it's just like creating like a chimichurri for your steak, and you're creating a sauce. Chimichurri is an herb blend together that is served traditionally in Argentina or Chile on steak.
Yep.
It's their version of pico de gallo that is to Mexico.
So
anyways,
here's another odd fact.
Okay.
So with the thought of basil being a bad plant,
I'm going to just start grazing while you're talking.
it's the method of sowing seed.
This is a Genovese.
Okay, was that if you were going to sow a basil seed, and basil had the bad connotation of, hey, this is not a good thing, right?
Do you have to protect yourself
You have to
sow
protect
it?
yourself.
Okay.
So you'd have to say, damn basil, grow like you're supposed to. Don't harvest. Gosh darn it. So you were supposed to be yelling
Your theatrics just showed up.
and all of that type of good stuff, right? To get the basil to understand that it needed to come up
Oh my goodness.
pure. And I always thought, wow. So you have all these noblemen or clergymen, maybe even, and they're out. And this is the only time that you're ever going to hear them cussing or swearing
Yeah.
at a basil plant because they're trying to drive the badness out of the basil. How weird is that?
It's a little strange because
Yeah.
it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
You're actually putting more negative energy into it than you're cleansing.
But
What?
could you see them going through the motions?
Oh, absolutely. It's an ignorance thing for sure. Well, and it's staple of the times. It's clearly it's setting a timeline.
And they were probably so animated. It was boom, and then again and again.
because if they
they're-
weren't passionate about it, it didn't work.
absolutely, I think that had to
They
be
had to
part
sell
of
it to the
like they're
spirits.
just flashing the hell out of these.
They have to
you
sell
know.
it to the spirits.
Yeah.
In
Or
the back of
anybody
it.
that may have been looking out of the castle at the time.
The back of the greenhouse, I would call that scarification.
It had to
it
be
is-
had to be like a catharsis thing for them, I imagine.
It might have to have been because it's different back then. There was different ways you did things.
Who needs therapy?
Like,
When you can go
I just
scream
need
at
to
basil.
Go scream at basil
Yeah.
seeds.
But it's not much different than it is today, right? If we're going to say that we're going to do it,
we're
probably
gonna
ought to do it
we gotta
because
do
there's
it.
somebody that's watching, right? And back then, you got to do this. You got to do it to the basil. There had to have been people watching from the castles or from the workers in the yards going,
Oh, they're checking on him.
absolutely.
Guarantee it. They're checking
And
on
that,
him.
that passes down, right? So a generation or two later, maybe they're not swearing as much. Please, basil, grow, please. No. So
I don't know. We're in Century of the Offended, so God only knows what you would do now. I mean, you have to be politically correct and culturally sensitive at the same time. What would happen now?
we would probably get. I probably ought to not go there.
I just see them dipping it in bleach really quick or something stupid, like plant safe bleach, or they put it through and put it through an auger, or they could do so many but put it in an autoclave, totally kill it. I mean, there's so many different things.
I think a lot of the modern greenhouse seems to go towards the equipment now.
It does go towards the equipment.
Same energy is there. Just
yeah. No,
just
well,
moved.
and if you get rid of seeds, then you're gonna have to create everything in a lab. That's kind of how it works. I mean, I went to an incredible tissue culture lab a couple of weeks ago over in Oregon that they had 200. You would have been in hog heaven.
Probably.
They had 200 different kinds of blueberries in little petri dishes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was 200 plants per.
What nursery was this?
This was at Microplants.
Okay.
Jonathan's place.
Okay.
And it was really cool because they were mass producing.
Yeah.
Basically, if you ended up with a super high end holy basil, that is a bitch to get to germinate because there's such a tough environmental thing. Because usually basil is coming from Thailand.
Well, it's believed that it was originated in India.
Okay. Yeah. I was I'm over that area. So Thailand was certain kinds of basil, your holy basil and Thai basils come out of Thailand area. Whereas some of your, there's some Italian basils that come from Italy that have also been, carried over from India earlier in times. So the plant goes way, way, way back.
Yes, it does.
And it's all European and Southeast Asia kind of area. Is my understanding.
Which basils do you prefer? Do you prefer the sweet basil or do you prefer the common?
Well, so I have a place for the common. Absolutely. I put it with pistachios. I do a pesto with pistachios with no cheese. And I tend to use so I'll make a big batch of pesto. I'll do something with pasta. I will actually take salmon and I will bake it with a layer of pesto on it and fresh sliced tomatoes roasted. That is really, really yummy. And then I also do, I take a big scoop of it and take a can of garbanzo beans and make my own hummus. And then I'll season to taste. And then I have fresh pesto hummus. I do pesto vinaigrettes. And so that's just your traditional Italian basil.
So what do you use the sweet basils for?
Sweet basils, that's a lot of that stuff. But I like a sweet basil syrup with strawberries. And you could do that over ice cream. You could do it with balsamic drizzle. You could do it with pistachios sprinkled across strawberry ice cream with fresh cut strawberries and little sliced ribbons.
My stomach is already growling.
I know. I'm basil is one of my favorite herbs to play with. But the thing about basil is it is so much better fresh. So dried basil, there is a period of time in the calendar that basil is just don't even think about it. During the winter months when you have really heartier foods, when you need sages and rosemaries and stronger flavors because you have thicker, darker, heartier meats like your beefs and stuff. I'm moving away from red meat as an entirety thing just because I don't have enough digestive enzymes to break down red meat. That's my body. I know that about my body. It's fine. So I lean to basil because it's a lighter herb. It's got a lot of vivacious flavor. It pairs really well with lemons and citruses, and it's incredible with fish. And I eat a lot of fish. You are not a fish guy.
I am not.
I know that about you, but you are a pasta guy. And if I put chicken in it and make it taste really good or shrimp, you would eat it in a hot second.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've traveled enough and eaten enough with Dave. I know how to feed Dave. I also know what he likes, and that helps. But also on the flip side of that, I'm really fascinated with, and we've had a hell of a time growing it here, and I haven't shoved our growers too hard because we haven't had the right talent on staff to be able to do it yet. But I'm hoping as we build our team that we find somebody who I can kind of lean into. I want somebody who's passionate about it. I'm really fascinated with holy basil. Okay. Holy basil usually originates from Thailand because it is a cousin to the Thai spicy basils.
Okay.
But it has not only...
Would that be part of the globe as well? Like the spicy globe or...
They are connected.
Okay.
Now, as far as the genetic path and the genus, I'm not sure. I'd need a botanist to help me with that. But holy basil has antidepressant properties. So if you can get a holy basil oil and create a tincture and put that in your tea, you could, if you have mild depression or mild depression feelings or symptoms, and you don't want to medicate with a prescription, just put that in your coffee or your tea in the morning, and it literally would just take that edge off.
Now, the holy
That's
basil,
an interesting concept to me.
as far as a growing plant, is this a larger
It's
variety? It's a smaller?
It's the small leaf varieties.
Okay.
And so it's going to take a lot to compress down to actually create an oil.
Right.
Now, I know that doTERRA and plant therapy, because I do a lot of essential oils. I make my own pain salve, that kind of thing. And I use holy basil in a couple of them. I'm a little particular what I put it with. I tend to lean towards more of the bergamot citrus. Like I like to pair things that go together, if you will. And I want to stay away a little bit more from the other herbs when I do that. I want to go more citrus and that kind of thing when I'm using that. But also if I want to create some kind of tincture that I'm putting in teas and stuff, because I'll make my own tea all the time. I will use holy basil oil and dilute it down with the tincture and when I'm using tincture,
because it's hard to find that as a regular plant. So
I would agree. Yeah. It's super hard, and that's why finding it's the little tiny doTERRA one, and it's stupid expensive.
Any of your fine leafed basils,
it's the teeny bottle. It's not the big bottle.
No, but I'm saying as far as a plant, you know, everybody produces the larger leaf.
Well, and there's so much. There's so much genetics into these now. So there is a vegetative version that Proven Winners has, put their name and their stamp, that Amazel basil. And that one, so when we say vegetative, I mean it comes in as a cutting. Most basil, like 95% of basil, or closer to probably 99, is their seed.
Right.
And they're pretty easy seed. They're pretty fast.
Yep.
There is something to be said for light levels. I was learning a couple weeks ago when we were over in Oregon. There was another grower we were at, Iyasaki Brothers, and they did lighting to change the stretching. So instead of having one single stem that went way up, they're bunching and compact. And so the leafing structure. Pinching? Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know if they had pinched at this point. They were setting up for a good enough structure that you could have pinched or not pinched and still got away with it. So from a labor standpoint, the input into the product is pretty solid.
Now, as you're talking about this, there's, like I said, there's going to be a lot of people that have basil in their kitchen.
Yeah, and so the first question I get asked is, how do you pinch it?
Absolutely.
So as Dave's sitting here with this plant, you can tell that this one was pinched at the top.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to go to a branching point. So you got the single center stem, and then you have side stems, and then there's one going up. You're going to pinch right there.
So can you see this, Zach, on a close-up? So where we'd be pinching.
We'd be pinching right
exactly.
There. You'd be pinching that off.
And that's exactly how you're going to do that for the home gardener.
Yeah.
So, and this is going to force.
And pinch aggressively, because it'll continue to leaf out.
To force out that way.
And then you get, so like people are like, oh, well, I don't need it. It's like, you should just probably start pinching so that if you do need it in 2 weeks, it's got enough leaves for you to do something with. So I find, so for going back to the vegetative basil, that Amazel basil is like a shrub. That thing is massive.
It is big.
Whereas like the little Dulce Fresco, if it's not pinched, it's just a single stem.
It's just a stem. Yep.
Yep. That's it. That's not very exciting. So they've got some breeding into, and I think you've seen some of these, the Emerald Towers, and they've come up with different varieties and they've crossbred them. And most of the traditional basils are bred off of kind of that Genovese Italian leaf, because that's that traditional. It's just like a basic parsley. You know, parsley, there's curly parsley, which I think has a lot better flavor because parsley is garbage. Personal opinion. I don't like parsley. It's fine.
I don't like the Italian parsley.
Okay. See, the curled is better, but the curled doesn't, it's not traditional.
Right.
And regular parsley tastes like toothpaste to me, and I don't want anything to do with it.
It's always been meant as a garnishment, really, in the last 50 years.
I also
but they used to have it. They used to have it more in recipes and things.
Yeah.
So it's fallen out of favor, and at some point it'll come back.
It'll become bougie again, just like cauliflower and hazelnuts. Yeah. It's a matter of time. There's always some bougie reinvention of something. So
yeah,
it's just like the pressure cooker became the ninja. Like I'm like, what? It's a pressure cooker.
Exactly. One of the stories behind sweet basil.
Okay.
Is that back
Keep
in the
eating.
1600s, young women,
I'm gonna make sure there's not bugs.
to
on this.
show that they were available, would wear necklaces of sweet basil. Okay. Now, the strong aroma would help draw in men at the time.
Okay.
And or earrings. And it was said that
You're stinky. Can we talk?
Yeah. It was said that if a young woman came to a man and said that she wanted to marry him because she was wearing the basil leaves,
Okay.
that the man was obligated to marry her.
Obligated.
So the woman chose the man. And I'm sure
Different than our Dark Valentine's
absolutely,
episode. No, it's not
and
how that one went.
I'm sure you got these guys out here that are in the square and there's something happening or whatever. Oh, look, Cynthia has the basil. I'm gonna, and she's turning to, So I thought that was always so sweet that.
Well, I'd be real careful wearing
that
basil
women-
around.
Yeah.
I want to know what he looks like first. And I want to know what his job is.
Until she smiled and then she had no teeth, right? So
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
fitting.
Yeah. So I always thought that was
There's
kind
another bad
of
joke there
a
that we're
sweet
not gonna
story
tell.
on a take on sweet basil,
Okay.
so it's kind of cool.
Well, and the fun thing about basil, I think people always attribute basil to food. There is so much that could be done with basil in cocktails
Mhm.
and mocktails.
Now, we had some of
I'm
that.
not really,
We had some basil drinks on a previous
Yeah.
podcast.
absolutely. And it goes really well with lemonades and it goes really well with fruits.
Mhm.
And it's just different. It tastes like summer. That's the way I look at it. Basil tastes like summer. Like when I think of basil, I think of sunny days, picnics, patios, fresh sliced tomatoes, and caprese
Yeah.
salads.
Yeah.
That's what I think of basil. And it's an easy thing to grow.
Mhm.
And so when I do vegetated basil, I'm just letting that be a shrub in the ground because I find it gets too woody in a container. Now, when I say ground, I'm doing raised garden
Right.
beds, but it has a lot of root space.
So are you taking the cuttings from the ground then, from your outdoor stock?
No, I'm
To use?
taking a plant from here
No, I
and I'm
understand.
planting it.
But you're using it for something.
Oh, absolutely. I'm cooking with it. Like
Yeah.
I'm throwing in recipes. I'm playing with it all the time. But then if I'm doing some of the seed varieties, I have more success myself in containers. And so, and for me, because it grows so quickly and it has to be trimmed a lot, I have to put it by my kitchen window outside so I see it. Because if I don't, I'll ignore it and it'll go to flower and there's a whole thing. And on the vegetative one that's out in the garden, I have to pinch off the flowers all the time. And people are like, oh, it flowered out. You can't eat it. It's like
Yeah.
bullshit. Just pinch the flowers off, cut it. It's still gonna taste close. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's not enough of a difference for the
No.
human palate
No.
to be able to taste the difference.
Put it in your dish.
Exactly.
Hey, you
It's
got
not gonna
basil in
change
there.
just because it flowered. It doesn't taste. No, that's hogwash. Move on.
Believe it or not, there are people that grow plants just for the flower effect.
That's
Basil
fair.
would be one.
That's fair.
Sage, oregano.
Oh
This-
my gosh, the pineapple sage with the red flowers.
Mhm.
That I don't grow that for the leaf at all.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
for the-
strictly
it's for
for
the
the
color.
smell
That's
and the
right.
color. That's it. I really only
You
want
rub
the
that in
smell
the
while
garden?
I'm walking out
Yeah,
there.
rub that in the garden and say,
I
oh
love
my
that.
goodness. Yeah.
Well, and I'm a huge herb person. I actually took my front flower bed, so I have a horseshoe driveway, which it's got this big planter, and that's where I put all the color. But there's a little one in my little alcove entrance to my house, and it's just a little square one. And I used to put flower baskets and all sorts of stuff in there, and now I just put perennial herbs. I'm just like, let's just see what happens. And the chives have taken over. That's a thing. But I've got fennel in there, and I've got thyme, and I've got rosemary, I've got lavender, I've got all the things. Now, basil is an annual. It
Mhm.
is a soft annual. And you saw me while I was eating looking for bugs on this because aphids love basil.
They do.
So something that I recommend this, and you might even find them in our greenhouse because a perfect environment for plants is a perfect environment for bugs. But what I did is I lifted the leaf and I looked underneath because that's where aphids live. So if you want to see, and they love the newest leaves.
That's right.
They love the newest leaves. And so that's the first place I'm going to look on a basil plant because if you get aphid on basil, you're not getting aphids off of basil.
Nope. It's eye candy.
It is eye candy. And also, like what we would treat like a tomato or a rose for aphids, you're not eating the leaf
Right.
on the rose or the tomato.
Right.
Actually, tomato leaves are actually poisonous. I don't know if you knew that.
Mm.
So if your dog eats tomato leaves, he's going to have to eat a whole plant before it's going to hurt him. So take a breath. Because you're like, oh God, my dog. But humans aren't designed to ingest tomato leaves, but the tomato fruit itself is fine. And so if in order to control an aphid, right, you're going to use a horticulture soap or an oil, and then potentially a systemic through the root system that'll come up and kill the bug when it's eating on the leaf,
one
right?
way for chemical based.
Exactly, for chemical based. Well, and you could take Dawn dish soap, olive oil, and water and spray it on the plant. But if the sun
it'll bake it.
Hits that water droplet on the leaf, it's going to completely ruin the cellular integrity of the leaf. So when you're buying basil, check for bugs. You want clean basil.
Even if it's in a supermarket,
Yeah, so even if especially if it's in the supermarket, especially if it's a grain, it doesn't matter. You want clean basil because you're going to eat it. And if you're like me and you don't have time, sometimes you're doing a vinegar drench in your house. So I don't know if you guys know this. Like if you harvest cauliflower, okay, broccoli, so it's a head, and there's bugs that could be hiding in that, like earwigs and stuff. You do a little bit of white vinegar and water, and you pop the fruit down into that, all the bugs will come out. So that might work the same way. I don't know. You're just going to want to have a lighter vinegar to water ratio because you're not going to want to burn the plant.
Does it take the taste away at all?
No.
Doesn't turn it vinegary?
I just would be careful. I would do like probably 10 parts water, 1 part vinegar. I wouldn't go like half by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be a little careful.
Yeah.
And then I would do a heavy solid rinse on it with some warm water so you can wash it off a little bit better. And then maybe some lemon water to help invigorate it out of that and kind of freshen it because the citrus will help preserve it at the same round. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of useless knowledge up here. Don't worry.
It's along with the mythology of plants, and not, I've always been interested in the herbs.
You've always been into herbs because you got a whole thing about all the herbs in
popular
in
music
literature.
and
Exactly.
music and,
Yeah, Dave's way into this. It's great.
So I was thinking the other night, when Jennifer told me we were going to talk about basil, I'm going, and this never happened. Okay. But
what if?
I wonder, what if basil it was known or is currently known now in our way of speaking as the love flower?
Yeah.
Okay. Because,
or the love herb or whatever.
Because of that, or the food and all that. What if 1967?
What if?
We're sitting there as a fly on the wall and we're listening to the Beatles come up with their newest song. And you've got John Lennon, Basil.
Should I be Paul McCartney right now?
This is 1967, okay? And the drug scene, and they're probably sitting in India. We're probably in India somewhere, okay? And they're
in an opium den.
Yeah.
We're in India.
So John Lennon is smelling the basil plants, and then you've got Paul that says, "Hey John, you know that basil's the love herb, right?" And he's going, "Love. Love is all you need. Love." Do you think that could have happened? I mean, we weren't there.
Possible.
We don't know.
So theatrical.
Yeah.
I was there.
Absolutely. I'm thinking in my head, what's love got to do with it? In a totally different way. Yeah, but honestly.
As Tina Turner's, what's love got to do?
She's like, bitch, I'm hungry. This has nothing to do with love. I'm hungry. You want to love me? Feed me.
Just made me think of that Forrest Gump scene.
How it is when we walked in, you could smell it right away. I actually saw you walk in with the plant, and I was like, "Yep, we're ready for basil." So, and that's the coolest part about it is when you walk into the greenhouse after I've cut basil.
Oh, yeah.
And there is no way I could utilize all the basil that I trim in, a crop trim when we're trying to hold the crop because. Usually what happens is it's April and we have a cold stretch and we can't ship it because it's too tender. And so it stretches out and we're like, crap, it's not going to hold. So then we go shear everything, take it down so in 2 weeks it can branch right back out.
And then Susie does a
Oh God,
have you had
she
her
does
pesto?
she does a really good.
Ooh.
She cooks her pesto, so it's a little bit different.
Yes, she does, but
She
it's
cooks
still
She cooks it. So hers is different. And Susie is one of our growers. She's Guatemalan. So her take on things is her pupusas. Oh, they're so good. And that has nothing to do with basil.
No.
And she doesn't use those.
but
Use that
she
in basil.
does
But she does a
excellent job on it.
pesto
Yeah.
that is
on that.
tremendous. And so, and hers and I are just totally different because mine's fresh.
Yeah.
And, but I like fresh herbs.
I do
But
too.
there's some
I do
herbs
too.
you have to cook down. Basil is definitely not one of those.
So in the minute or so that we've got left, probably, how can we tie in the basil with what we're doing here this summer?
Well, you know what I would do is, first off, I would challenge everybody to try amethyst basil. It's purple basil. It's a little bit sweeter.
Not only that, if you have your basils, you have a green and then you have a purple.
Then there's a spicy, there's a clove, there's a Thai.
But they're all different and they all look great
different.
in the landscape when you have them in the
And
the
there's
beds like
zero reason why you can't put basil in with your flowers.
Yeah.
Because you're already fertilizing them.
Mhm.
You're already watering them. They're in the sun. You just have to keep scissors close.
Right.
And it's okay if you trim something down and then let it flush back up. Now you got to be a little careful about what you put with it because basil has different water needs than some of your traditional flower annuals. You can't get too dry. It can't get too wet. It's kind of like a Bernstein bear.
So we're going to have an herb festival?
We are. And I don't know the date because I don't have my little postcard here.
But I would imagine that we're probably
it's a
going.
Lavender Herb Festival, and I want to say it's July 6th.
And we're probably going to highlight different herbs other than just lavender?
Yeah. We're actually going to play with it a whole bunch.
Ooh.
So we, with the Jerome Farmers Market relocating to the Moss Greenhouse's parking lot, we are going to have some fun. So we are doing a lavender herb festival. There's a sunflower festival. There is a tomato pepper. I'm going to call it a salsa festival because Moss is going to participate. We're actually going to grow a bunch of the things we already have on our menu, and we're going to harvest to use and print recipe cards and teach people what to do with them.
Good.
We might even have a pesto tasting competition.
There you go.
How cool would that be?
That would be pretty cool.
Well, Moss has with us being the host of, we're not we're a sponsor. I should say we're not the host. Kathy is the host. Kathy Bartholomew, who's been on the podcast before. Kathy does a tremendous job. She's a certified master gardener. She's a true lifetime gardener, and she believes in bringing fresh produce, and she understands the needs of the community, and she's very community minded. When she had her meeting recently with all of her vendors, they're so stupid excited to come out here that we can't wait. And so the way that I've been looking at the events that we're going to partner with Kathy with is, lavender is the herb she's passionate about. Like point blank, she loves lavender. She's got lavender soaps and lavender this and lavender that.
But a lavender field in full color. Oh my
gosh, it's so cool. Yeah. And she's a connoisseur of lavenders, and we do not nearly have enough lavender selection for her. So I've challenged her to give us the list that she wants us to grow. We'll just grow it, and so then she can utilize it. But then in the swoop of it, why can't we have pesto tasting? Why can't we?
I think that'd be great.
And then for like the tomato pepper festival or the salsa festival, whatever we end up calling it in the long term, we're going to actually grow every tomato and pepper that Moss grows that you can taste at the festival.
Perfect.
Why not?
Yeah. PJ has always said,
why not?
We know what the regular tomatoes taste like.
I know.
What is
I'm an early girl hater to this day.
Yeah. What do some of the others that we grow?
What do they taste like? Well, and why should I risk, the 4 square feet it takes in my garden for this tomato?
Right.
Why? Why should I give up that land for the stupid, tasteless early girl that'll give me tomatoes in 52 days? Or why not try the Jetstar tomato that produces me tomatoes that taste good in 49 days?
So I know that this is not,
I'm picking on early girls, so I have to defend myself a little bit.
That this isn't a basil topic on tomatoes, but in your opinion, heirloom tomatoes taste better than standard tomatoes?
Heirlooms and hybrids that are bred off heirlooms, yes. Yep. I think that there's a place for all. It really depends on the use of your tomatoes, right? So if you're doing fresh tomatoes in salad, the first thing you need to know about me, and the podcast name should tell you everything you need to know, bloom in full color.
Right.
I want the full rainbow in my food.
Right.
I want every single
They say
color.
it's very healthy that way.
It is very healthy for you. I also encourage to use seasonal. So I don't eat tomatoes outside of tomato season. I really don't. I'll do sauces and stuff. I buy cherry tomatoes for my daughter because she's a cherry tomato hound. I bribe other daughter with ice cream to try one single cherry tomato a season. One singular, 1 ounce, this big. It's silly. But what I think it comes down to is basils pair so well with tomato season.
It does.
Because they're a correlated flavor profile. And every person who grew up in the mixed mutt, banana belt of the US, Italian food pairs really well with basil, and that is traditional to tomatoes. Now, when you go into the purpose of tomatoes, what it comes down to is, am I saucing? Am I doing fresh cut tomatoes? Do I like them on burgers, or do I need to make salsa?
Right.
What do I use them for? And then at that point, I would challenge the home consumer to say, make sure you cover your base needs, the things you absolutely know that you need, and then have room to play with 1 or 5. I play with a lot just because I have a lot of land. I can do that. And if I don't have the land, I play with it here because I can cheat.
Yeah.
Perks of the job.
Yeah.
But, in the flip side of that, I get burnout and I'm a farmer and it's exhausting.
Right.
It's fine.
So bringing this home.
Okay.
What can we expect from our herb offerings this year?
We are playing right now. So we've got a pretty solid basil selection. We've minimized our lavender selection so we can get it right. Because we had a little bit of not best use practices out back and we wanted to get to the good varieties. We are starting to fine tune our growing staff so that we can challenge them to get passionate about things. We're trying to identify who are the people who really like doing this.
Right.
And then I'm going to challenge my business partner and co-landowner into creating flower beds that you can appeal to the 5 senses.
There you go.
So we're going to do it in retail as well. So like the big soil bin at the back, we're playing with putting false bottoms in that, raising it up because it's got proper drainage, because it's too bulky to move to our potting barn area. So we're actually going to turn that into a big, huge raised garden bed that you can actually graze out of.
Cool.
And we're going to play
nice.
And we're going to use that as a barrier in the kids area to protect it from the electrical equipment in the wall, so that we're encouraging kids to eat vegetables and herbs right there. So we're trying to bring it completely into the experience of a customer as well as a good friend. And for those who watch Garden Answer, it's Laura's mom, Susan Kurth, who owns Interseed over in Ontario, Oregon. Susan made this comment after we hired Adam. And she said, make sure, if she was down at the Reno show with us, and she goes, the one thing that I would give advice to is appeal to the 5 senses when you're in a retail environment, especially in a greenhouse, because that is a completely immersive experience that you do not have the opportunity to do in very many retail locations. We are unique. You can touch it, you can taste it, you can feel it, you can smell it. Like you can do everything in our garden center. And so that's the point of the herbs. So we're going to play a lot more with this. We're very
They'll be available probably the first week of April, or by mid-April.
By mid-April, we're going to have basil.
Tell them about our 804 program that we have.
Oh, so we've got a mixed basil pack. So we do something, it's a jumbo 4-pack. And so it's got 4 different kinds of basil. Can't remember them all off the top of my head, but there's a green one. There's a lemon or lime one. It's only one of them. I think there's a purple one, and then there's a globe opal style one. And then we have 2 different kinds of seed basil that we work with, and then we have the vegetative amazel basil.
So we're going to have a lot of basil come April.
Our largest selection of herbs is in basil. I will say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Without question. And we have a lot more room for that to grow, being that our menu might be changing and expanding a little bit too, because of some things happening in our industry. Yep. So I'll leave it at that and leave it a little bit ominous, but we're going to start using retail as a trial area. Good. And we already kind of did that, but with kind of new regime, new management, we're kind of taking it and running, because he's a plant nerd. Not that the previous regime wasn't, just he's leaning. Right. And so we want to lean with him. Right. We're going to support him, make sure we hold his suspenders so he doesn't fall too far into the mud.
I think everybody coming out this year is going to be surprised at what they see.
We invite you. If you think Moss Greenhouses was one thing,
we're switching it up.
Wait to be surprised. I'll leave it at that. But
Yep.
I will say there's going to be a very comfortable space for both your children and your partner, whether that's husband, wife, spouse, doesn't matter. We've come up with the daddy daycare area that's going to have a coffee setting and TV. And we've got a kids area that's completely moved and changed. But the one really fun part is we actually have a potting barn now. So where you have to buy the soil, buy the bark, buy the plants, find the pots, clean them out, all of that. Now you can just empty them at home into the compost pile at the back, or throw them in the garbage, whatever, or throw the old soil in the garbage. You bring your empty pots out. We will help you plant it, design it, and fertilize it for you.
Yeah, that's
Here.
nice. That's nice.
Multi-step. Now you got it all at home. You need somebody to help you get it out of the car. That's fair.
Right.
That we can't help you with, but we're trying to make it so that you can really have an immersive.
Bring your spouse and let him or her sit in the daddy daycare while you're planting. So it's a win-win.
And we mean that as an upbeat thing.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
But we didn't want to call it husband babysitting area because he, A, might get offended. B, he might not be a husband. He might be a boyfriend or a spouse or brother or whatever. It might be your wife and you're a lesbian. It doesn't matter. We're inclusive. We don't care. And so we call it daddy daycare because at the same time, you want to have fun. You want them to be comfortable too and enjoy their experience. But also, if it's cold day in March, when you're listening to this podcast and you're really craving a little bit of sunshine and it's kind of cruddy weather out, we invite you to bring your lunch, bring a friend, come out and have lunch on the patio.
Yeah.
Come eat in daddy daycare because there's going to be tables and chairs. You can wedge them out. I don't care. And come out and enjoy the space. And we're going to have so many events coming up. Yep. We're going to have yoga in the greenhouse this year. I can't wait to go in there and see what the space looks like because in between these podcasts, I had Brandon remove that whole table in the back bay.
Oh,
so I'm kind of excited to see. So we got a new yoga area.
Wow.
There's so many things coming. So we're going to get the website all up to date in the next couple of weeks and then be pushing it out on Facebook. We'll be pushing recipes out. We've just taken a completely new turn and I'm stoked about it. Your timing for retirement sucks, but that's okay. If I plan to invite you over, I'll just plan for a hotel room and a plane ticket.
Yeah,
that's just what's going to happen. Otherwise, we might have to do a remote podcast with Dave over in South Carolina.
Yeah, we'll do a Zoom call or whatever.
Yeah, we can make that happen. They do it all the time.
I can tour you with what I'm doing at that point.
Well, one of these days, we're going to have to do a microgreens hydroponic in your garage, patio, whatever podcast.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Adam and I are too busy. We're going to hand that off to you and have you come up with a demo.
If you've never grown basil, I would encourage you to do it. Jennifer, this is our homework.
Yeah.
Grow it and have it for indoors. Folks, if you've got this in your kitchen and you just rub the leaves, you're going to have that basil smell all day. It doesn't go away. Wonderful, wonderful smell.
It does not go away.
Appreciate you listening. And hopefully you've gotten a little bit out of the stories. I'm a geek on that. So
it's okay. He's a geek we like. If you find a stamp with basil on it,
there are stamps.
That has, of course, there's stamps that has been used or not used. Dave is in the market. He likes those kind of things. He's a stamp collector. With that, if you like this episode, share it with your friends. We're on all the streaming platforms. Like us, follow us, subscribe us. We will record that in the future, so Zach can just plug that in at the end, so I don't have to regurgitate it off the tongue. That is not a politically correct word. I apologize. And with that, we invite you to go live life in full color because plain is pretty boring, and try some basil recipes.
Basil, the love herb.
Thank you, guys.